This is TGC Spotlight, the series where I put a shine on up-and-coming YouTubers that deserve more exposure. And with only 178 subscribers, today's channel is the tiniest one I've ever featured here. It's Vince19. I love gaming analysis channels, but there certainly are a lot of us. That means that it's sometimes hard to approach this topic in a way that hasn't been done to death. Now, I try to get around that by delving into personal anecdotes and kind of reveling in my own biases, but Vince19 goes in the opposite direction, in the closest thing you can get to an objective direction. And it's one that I've never seen before. Statistical analysis! Now, I can see this very straightforward approach coming across pretty dry to some people, but I personally enjoy learning about things like this, and I'm consistently impressed with how comprehensive his videos turn out. This is a unique way to look at video games, and it's not one that would have ever occurred to me. So to highlight what makes him special and kind of get you started, here's a few minutes of a very nice piece that contrasts with my own Dreamcast episode well. It's Vince19's analysis on the fall of what he so aptly called the Hazuki Wall. Hope you enjoy.
Now here's where things get interesting. Right here is NBA 2K1, then we have Shenmue, then we have Tony Hawk 2, and finally Jet Grind Radio. Now notice those are all kind of in one rough line, okay? Collectively, I call that the Hazuki Wall, named after our favorite fearless leader protagonist. So what is that they're defending against? What line are they on? Well, of course, if you've been looking at the bottom of the chart, you could probably estimated that is in fact the PlayStation 2 release date, October 26, 2000, that red line right there, they run right through it. I believe those games were the last line of defense that Sega tried to put up to combat the PlayStation 2. If you're old like me, you might remember that it was just about impossible to find a PlayStation 2 when that was released, and the launch lineup, besides Tekken Tag, wasn't exactly a godsend. So that should have meant that these 4 games should have given the Dreamcast a golden opportunity to establish itself and compete against the PlayStation 2. But unfortunately, the PlayStation 2 release date was also the last time that a Dreamcast game would crack 400,000 sales. A game that came out after the Dreamcast launch day, so a non-launch title, but before the PlayStation 2 came out, could be predicted to sell nearly 70% more copies than a game that came out after the PlayStation 2 was released. It was always a race against time with the Dreamcast, and the fact that even controlling for the big sales of launch titles, the idea that games in the first half of the system's life could be predicted to sell nearly 70% more copies than games released in the second half of the system's life is massive. And maybe I'm way off, but intuitively, that seems to run counter to what should typically happen in a game system's life.